What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and we've kind of been expecting this. Here on the channel, we've been saying, Marvel Comics, with everything that's going on with Disney, they've been cutting a lot of staff. Originally, it was furloughs, but they've cut a lot of permanent staff as far as the theme parks. We saw they've been downsizing ESPN recently, and now we have the first few names that have been released from Marvel Comics. They were wrapped up in the furloughs. They had come back, but now we know that publisher John Nee has been let go, as well as Judy Stevens, who is a producer at Marvel Comics. She worked on some more nondescript stuff. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But here to talk with me about this is the X-Men aficionado, the Marvel historian. Well, the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado.
Yeah, I was going to say you got it back. Yeah, I was going to say you kind of had it backwards there, but good enough. Same difference. Hey, how you doing, Wes? Glad to be here.
Good.
Yeah. No, I saw this news come through, and I was marginally surprised, but really not.
Not really. They're calling them, redundancies. And really, you think about it, until I think in 2018, Dan Buckley was the publisher at Marvel Comics. He got elevated to Marvel president.
Yep.
But he got a title elevation. He was still involved with Marvel Comics. It really was a redundancy. When I recently talked with Perch on the channel. We put up a list of the leadership at DC and Marvel. I didn't include John Nee. I included Dan Buckley.
Yeah.
Because it's really him, Kevin Feige, and CB Cebulski.
And Joe Quesada.
Well, yeah, Joe Quesada, but I don't know. It feels like he's been marginalized, kind of pushed to the side.
He still has a lot of sway in that office.
I don't think he's making it through this. How's that, Doc?
I don't either, mostly because I think that Disney's not going to want to have really many C-suite executives in another subdivision. So if they can wipe some out and bring it a little closer under the control of Disney, then all the better. No, I mean, look, when John Nee came in, I was happy, because he is a great comics guy. The only problem was he was never going to get out of Buckley's shadow.
No.
Buckley was front and center in this company for 20 years now. And even though all he did was get a promotion, which basically meant that, his old job, he was still going to be kind of involved in it. And whereas John Nee, when he got hired and never really ended up in the public side of it, I knew he wasn't long for the company.
Whenever they did interviews and they were talking to Marvel leadership, you never heard from John Nee. You heard from Dan
Buckley. Yeah. And Buckley kept he got a title. He got a new title, but he kind of kept a lot of the same job. He filled the same public, facing persona, and he never replaced. John Nee never replaced that, so it was a matter of time before he was gone.
Yeah, it really was a redundancy.
It kind of is, and I'm bummed to see it because he is a great comics guy, but Marvel's front office has just bloated enormously over the last 5 to 10 years. When Quesada took over as EIC back in 2001, something like that. That front office was very, very threadbare. And now you have a handful of C-suite executives, more vice presidents than I can throw a stick at. A bunch of their editorial office is huge but ineffectual, which is really weird. It's become incredibly bureaucratic by the look of it. So no, they have a lot of redundancies in their front office, and everybody keeps getting promotions and somebody gets brought in to replace them, but they're not really replacing them. They're just filling a spot.
Mm-hmm. And, a year ago, we did learn that Kevin Feige had been kind of elevated to be the chief creative officer of everything to do with Marvel. It wasn't just Marvel Studios or the Marvel material that was going to be on Disney Plus. It ended up being the Marvel TV shows and Marvel Comics itself. So we were waiting for some major changes. Obviously, Joe Quesada did get a downgrade as far as job title.
Yeah.
But we've been waiting to see kind of the effects of that. Obviously, early in 2020, the pandemic set in. Marvel did go pencils down, furloughed a lot of people, including Mr. Nee, Judy Stevens, who's the other person that's been confirmed to let go. And it felt like that the pandemic itself and all the calamity that Disney has been suffering as far as their theme parks, as far as the movies being shut down, all their production for their Disney Plus shows that they actually need right now, because Disney Plus blew up as everybody was in there, obviously at home. The cruise lines are shut down. All the big money-making apparatus for Disney, basically, tanked them in the red. I think they had a 91% loss in revenue in the second quarter. Things aren't good at Disney. We've been saying them. First, they furloughed everybody. Then they started laying off tens of thousands of members of their park services. They just cut another over 100 people over at ESPN. Obviously, you think about ESPN. Their people are cutting the cord, but ESPN also has a streaming presence with their streaming platform that's kind of bundled up with Disney Plus and I believe Hulu.
Hulu.
I believe you can get all three of them. So it's not like ESPN isn't a big part of Disney's future as well. They're having major cutbacks. Over at DC Comics, we saw something similar happen earlier where Warner Media had to do a big scale down, and I believe they lost 33% of their staff. And I don't know that Marvel Comics is going to lose 33% of theirs, but they're certainly going to lose more than just John Nee and Judy Stevens.
Yeah, if this is where it ends, it would be absolutely shocking to me. As I said, they've had a lot of bloat into their front office over the past decade. And I think this is going to be their opportunity to slash that and try to maybe run a leaner, meaner Marvel. Whether or not that's effective is a whole other story. But it'll probably, there's a lot of guys that are good company men and women in that office that I think are going to end up affected by this because they've been there for a very long time.
They have high salaries.
Yes, they have higher salaries, and they're going to be the ones on the chopping block to get replaced by, I don't want to give any names.
And you have to think, Kevin Feige is a new chief creative officer. We haven't seen a lot of changes at Marvel Comics, but does Kevin Feige really want somebody in there that's, with the established Marvel way, or does he want to put people in those positions that are going to follow his vision, for Marvel Comics in the future as far as synergizing across platforms? You stream movies, comic books, obviously, things like that. He's going to want people there that are loyal to him, not people that are loyal to Joe Quesada. Kind of similar to what happened over at DC Comics. Bob Harris got let go, but a lot of the Bob Harris loyalists over there got let go as well. And it was kind of, now Jim Lee is the man that's front and center. Also, Dan Didio, people that were more loyal to Dan Didio's vision of what DC Comics was, well, they want to synergize DC Comics with their streaming platform, with their movies. Marvel's doing the same thing. So you're going to find yes men that are Kevin Feige yes men.
Yes. And I think Feige's now had enough time to really get an evaluation of what he has in that office, who he has in that office, whether or not they are team players, if they are loyalists, if they're set in their ways and they don't want to make the changes that he wants to make. He's getting an eye for that at this point. And it wouldn't be surprising if this is the opportunity that they have to take advantage of that with, as I said, streamlining, cutting, and overall kind of revamping that whole office.
Absolutely. And you think about with everything they have with the pandemic, I'm sure Kevin Feige's plate was exceptionally full. All the productions were shut down. They haven't been able to release a movie. He's probably had a lot of meetings to go to, and Marvel Comics is, honestly not the biggest money producer. It's not a money loser for Disney, but it's not a money producer, in comparison to some of those other divisions that he's the chief creative officer of. He was probably getting all that stuff sorted out. Now it's kind of time to start dealing with Marvel as some of the other divisions are working. I believe that they, like I said, ESPN, some of their movie divisions as well. I know Fox Searchlight was in there. They lost some people.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't think Joe Quesada is going to survive this. Do you think CB Cebulski and some of the other people, are on the chopping block? I'm expecting somewhat soon that Sana Amanat will actually leave Marvel Comics for a promotion up to Disney.
I'm leaning towards the same thing when it comes to Sana. She's always had that trajectory. Now, I don't think Quesada lasts through this. I think Cebulski does. I'm not sure about Tom Brevoort. I think he might be another one that ends up out the door. Yeah, but I'm not
really the guy that needs to go is Jordan White. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Jordan White's the one that needs to go, but he won't. So, oh well. But yeah, no, there's going to be a number of other, front office people that are moved out, and some younger people that are promoted, whether they deserve it or not. Some people brought in from the outside that are, maybe more Hollywood connections that Feige has, that he wants to see how they apply in comics from an editorial standpoint.
Look at what DC Comics did. As soon as they got rid of their 33% of their staff, they brought in a new general manager. Guess what he had zero experience with?
Comic
books.
Yep.
He had tons of experience with marketing as far as video games, sports teams, things of that nature. So, they're looking to start gaining some traction in other markets. And I imagine Marvel's going to have to do the same thing because the old ways are.
Yeah, and even somebody like David Gabriel, I think, might be on the way out too, because I think even Feige can probably sit there and go, "Look, you have one card that you know how to play, and that's variant schemes. You just keep making them more complicated to keep sales up." But
technically, he's a force multiplier. There's a lot more Marvel comics being ordered and through shops that are actually being sold to customers.
Yes, but at the same time, I think he also realizes that is first of all, law of diminishing returns, and that eventually that tactic will wear out. And if you have somebody that's a one note player, whenever they have to play a different note, it's going to be a problem. And so looking at somebody like, for the future in that role wouldn't surprise me.
I imagine we're going to get a marketing person that's outside of comics, kind of similar to what DC did. Getting back to John Nee, he's interesting. He was the CEO of Wildstorm when it was acquired by DC Comics. He was a VP at DC Comics. We know there's been a big shakeup there. Do you think he has a future over at DC Comics, or do you think he's going to, move somewhere else to another publisher? He's also been very successful, like in board games and things like that.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him at another publisher. I don't think it'll be DC. It might end up being IDW. He's got a lot of connection to some of the original IDW people, because a lot of those were original Wildstorm people.
Well, a lot of the original IDW people have all left within the last 6 years.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, IDW, maybe trying to get back to some of what made them successful initially. Plus the fact that, again, they have, board games and all kinds of other stuff. IDW has divisions for that too. So if he ends up running IDW as not just the comics, but like all of IDW, it wouldn't be surprising either. It would be a good fit, in my opinion.
I don't know. I think DC Comics might be a nice landing spot. He is a Jim Lee disciple, pretty much, you know?
Yeah, he's a gym guy, so that's another option. But I think he's already done that, and he'll end up somewhere else. Just gut feeling.
We shall see. Like I said, the numbers are coming out. I've seen some news sites speculating that as far as they know, this is it. This is not it. This is the beginning. We're seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be a lot more layoffs coming up, firings at Marvel. And you have to remember that Disney, a lot of times when they fire people, you won't learn about it until months after the fact. Obviously, we've learned about these two so far, but I imagine some of their editorial staff's going to get whittled down. Some of those senior executives with the higher price tags that probably bring less to the table as far as actual executing the day-to-day operations of Marvel Comics, probably going to be seen as redundant and moved to the wayside as Marvel trims down for a leaner operating system, you know, just like they're doing over at the Disney theme parks, just like they're doing at ESPN, just like they're doing in some of their movie divisions as well.
Yeah, I mean, the guys whose names show up in the comics themselves on the credits page are going to be the ones that everybody finds out first. But there's going to be a lot of other people behind the scenes whose names don't show up on credit pages. They're going to be out the door too.
Yeah. It's sad times, you know. I don't wish bad on anybody. I don't, you know, especially right now with everything going on. But hopefully, John Nee finds somewhere a soft landing. Hopefully, Judy Stevens also finds a soft landing, and everyone is able to continue on with their career progression. Doc, thank you so much for joining me today, talking about the recent firings at Marvel Comics. This is something we'll be talking about again on the channel as we learn more information. Is there anything else you need to say before we wrap this up?
No, best of luck to John Nee, and I hope that we end up with a little bit of a leaner, meaner Marvel out of this.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.